Hi, I'm Guy Barry with the Optimistic American, and this is our book club. Today, we're going to be talking about Meetings Suck by Cameron Herold. And my guest today is Mike Bechtel, Vice President Membership with Redirect Health. Membership with Redirect Health.
Thanks,
Mike,
Guy.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hopefully this is not a sucky meeting.
You know, if I wanted to go right into the book, I would say, okay, so for today, we're going to talk about part one for 5 minutes. Then the next part for 5 minutes, we'll talk about part two, and I would have an agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So for those who have never read the book, I assume they pick it up thinking meetings suck, I can relate, and they think they're about to hear somebody vent about why we shouldn't do meetings.
Yeah, and so clearly the title is engaging, right?
Yes.
Because and even when we walked in, it was like, oh, meetings suck. That's a book I can finally get behind. But when you get to the meat of it, it actually does tell you, one, why meetings suck, but how to also not make them suck.
Right. So there's a part of the book where he talks about that you're going to spend about 20% of your time in meetings. Curious, what percent of time do you spend in meetings?
More than 20, unfortunately.
Okay.
Like
right.
As I'm looking at my calendar this week, if I think about it, a lot. Probably the opposite, 80, which now I'm saying that it's
so
not good.
if the average is 20% to 80%, and we're not doing anything to teach ourselves how to do it, then it might as well just throw somebody who's never driven a car into a car and be like, hey, just have fun, figure it out, right?
Yeah,
like
super inefficient.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in meetings. We should have some type of training or some type of education around meetings. And this book is a very entry level, concise, I think you said it's 2-hour audiobook.
Yeah.
That can give you some tools. Not how to just lead them, but also attend them.
Yeah, and I think that the part you said there, and you'll probably get into it, was as I've seen, like I just stepped out of a meeting to come here, but I feel like my team is very prepared to run the meetings. One, and you mentioned it's entry level, but it coaches you, one, how to run the meeting, but also how to come prepared to the meeting.
Yep.
Right. Versus you can go through a lot of meetings. It's a waste of time. It's why people go, I got to go to another meeting. It sucks. As an attendee of it, I'm going to get out of it what I want. And so if I come prepared, it's better. And if I come prepared to lead it, it's better. So that's where this really sets a great foundation for.
Yeah. And there's a concept that is in this book that, it's also mindset, right? So if I am going to every meeting with the mindset of, here I go, another meeting, can't wait to get this over with so I can get to the next thing, then that's how I attend the meeting. Yeah. Versus if I go into the meeting going, awesome, what am I going to learn today? How are we going to accomplish some things and move on to the next one? Like just even preparing your mindset is important for meetings.
Yeah, I think to the agenda part, right? You said, hey, if I was doing this the right way, I'd say we're going to talk about part one, part two, part three. I can come into the meeting prepared because I know what's important for me, right? I know when I need to either be there or pay attention. Also, where I can drive value from, right, the different roles I may need to play in the meeting.
Yep. So part one of the book, it's 3 parts. Part one is the introduction, which is key concepts. Then he talks about there's 3 layers, meaning executive layer, management layer, employee layer. 2 comparisons, introverts, extroverts. And then last, he talks about every box of the org chart. And the biggest in the intro, so viewing it from the standpoint of executives and managers and employees have different ways they need to attend meetings, right? A lot of employees, they're coming into it as a contributor. They're a participant in the meeting. And then also that just because you're an introvert or extrovert, you still have to attend those meetings. How do you do them in those when you're that type of person? And then last, every person in the company is going to be in a meeting at some point. So what are we doing to prepare them? I'm curious, have you done any type of preparations? Because you've got a team of managers, supervisors, regular, frontline employees. What do you see and how you prepare people?
Yeah, and I think, and that's where I felt confident stepping out of the meeting I was just in, right? And a lot of it is this book and setting the foundation for not just newer leaders, and anybody can be a leader. They don't have to be a manager, supervisor, lead, but to come into that meeting ready. And I think having the pieces of what we're going to talk about. So really, it's the agenda, having an agenda ready, but then also coaching people on what role are they playing in there, right? Are they playing a role of they need to run the meeting? Are they playing a role of keeping time? Are they playing a role of reporting data? And coming into that is important, but also as I've seen my team grow into being better at leading meetings, that comes from me. If I come into a meeting unprepared and we have a poor meeting, and then I'm surprised in 2 weeks that somebody on my team's run a poor meeting, it's kind of stupid, right? I need to know that that's the way it's been. And so there's times where I have to go back and reread this to understand, like, gosh, what are the roles we need to play? And when things get off track, how do we, keep them on track with things like timekeepers and who's the note taker, who's putting things in a parking lot. That's been helpful in growing my team, right? And who has been younger people that have grown into, better meeting runners, essentially.
So then part 2 of the book goes into a little more detail on meetings, and it talks about preparing an agenda, determining the meeting style, starting on time, ending early, and compressing time, fostering useful communication, and knowing your role. And as we look through those, I'll start with the agenda because I do believe that you and I both have struggled at times having an agenda.
Yeah.
So where, what have you done that has helped you in organizing meetings? And do you believe you're the best at having agendas, or what do you think there?
No, I don't think so. But that point of it is from the other side of it, of who's coming to my meetings, is helping them hold me accountable for it by saying, hey, if we don't have an agenda, you're okay to say, what Cameron says is no agenda, no attenda, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go if there's not a point to this meeting. And being transparent with the team about that as what I need to do, because your point is it's not a natural thing. It's not like my unique ability where I set an agenda, is use people on my team that are better about it, right? Glenn's a manager that works with me. He's great at it. So I'll tell him, hey, when we go to this meeting, have this be the agenda. Here's what I want to talk about. And then he'll create it. And there's tools to use, right? There's certain systems we use that we put it in there. But certainly I think as I am intentional about an agenda, meetings run much smoother. Yeah. And if I'm not, you go in and it's very chaotic, and your point is you leave. And in that part, it talks about the cost of the meeting, right? I'm thinking about the meeting that's downstairs, and I think they say in the book it's like a $200 minimum, but up to whatever, right? When we have all day ones. And so there's a lot of time as business owners, as leaders, we want a return on that investment. We're investing their hourly or salary into that meeting. I want to get a return on that. If I'm spending $500 on a meeting, even if it's their time, I want a return on that $500. If I think about it that way, like I want to buy a water bottle and I want to get a return on that when I give it to someone. Either they're thirsty and now they're not, or they're grateful. Same thing with meetings. That intentionality, I think, is what drives better results with them.
Yeah, I think it's a great exercise of, if you're in a meeting and you're the leader and you're thinking this meeting is useless, go ahead and total up everybody's pay and what you just paid for that meeting for that hour, 2 hours, and then do it times every week, if it's a weekly meeting, and see what you're spending for that. Are you getting that value? The other thing around the agenda that I like is Cameron talks about, if you read the agenda and you think of the people participating and you go through the agenda and you're like, oh, I want this one person to attend for this one point, he'd say, well, don't include them. Like, go have a separate meeting with that person on that one point. If the attendees don't need to be there for everything on your agenda, then they don't need to be in that meeting. And I find with myself, occasionally I'm asking somebody to come in the meeting because I have something that I want to discuss them. And I think it's saving me time because I'm going, well, I can pull them in this meeting and talk about this one item so I don't have to go find them later. But then I just wasted their time. I made them sit through that meeting.
Yeah. That point too, I think that comes with a level of trust with teammates, right? Is there isn't this like, well, I have to invite them because they're going to feel left out. It's our time is very valuable. The other thing is people that do that, they tend to come in the meeting and they can actually be a distraction because what do? They're on devices, they're doing emails, they're clicking and clacking, and it gives an impression of, well, you don't have to pay attention in this meeting.
They're just clicking and clacking.
Clicking and clacking.
And he also talks about that if you got the agenda before, you should have the option to opt out. And meaning you could say, hey, I've looked at the agenda. There is nothing on here that, is for me. I'm going to opt out of even attending this meeting. I think that's an interesting concept because, there's times that we've had meetings where I feel someone sits in the meeting, have nothing to do with that meeting.
Yeah.
They've been there for 2 hours. So agenda before, giving the option for somebody to opt out.
Yeah, I think the side of that is empowering people to make that decision, because what I've seen is people want to get invited to meetings because they feel important. And wouldn't it be great to be empowered to say, I don't need to be in this. My time's more valuable. I see Dave do that. Dave Berg, our founder, do that a lot, where he's like, I'm trying to get stuff off my calendar. As you're coming up, you feel like you need more stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
I'm important. I have these, but that part would be really cool, again, to go to an employee to say, hey, here's my agenda. If you don't feel like you need to be here, tell me,
Right.
and empower them to do it.
Like many people listening right now, if they had known what we were going to talk about versus the title, they would have opted out ahead of time and not listened.
Yeah. Thank you for clicking and clacking.
So then it goes into determining the style, and this is where you can have 3 types of meetings, is what he argues, which is information sharing, creative discussion, and consensus decision. So information meeting, I'm just sharing stuff. I'm not actually asking for feedback. Creative discussion is, hey, we're going to discuss this, but ultimately maybe I'm leaving to go make that decision, or I'm going to take it from there. And then consensus decision is, hey, we're getting feedback and we're going to make a decision in this meeting. And I definitely see those 3 mixing within meetings. And I think that's where we get in trouble is you want to do some information sharing, but then you also want to do some creative discussion. And the person attending thinks this is a consensus decision. They're thinking, no, we're all going to make a decision right now. And you're like, no, I was here to just get some discussion from everybody. I will make the decision later. And I think that's where we get in trouble. And he believes you can improve your meetings if you're clear on what this type of meeting's for.
Yeah, and again, from both sides, if I'm leading the meeting and I'm very clear on those 3 points, you normally get your desired outcome.
Yeah.
Right. And on the other side, if I come in knowing, oh, this is a meeting where I'm just receiving information, and you're given the agenda and you're prepared for it, versus if you come into a meeting not knowing, we see it all the time where everybody starts to give feedback and they're going so far down the road where they're making decisions on something. So I think it's got to go from both sides, though. Really, from the leader of the meeting, if they do all the things, they do an agenda, they say it's this type of meeting, coming in, there's a much better expectation.
Yeah. And he goes into start on time and end early and compressed time. And key takeaways here for me were, 1, an Olympic swimmer doesn't show up to the starting block at the whistle, right? Like, hey, we're blowing the whistle, you need to jump in. They don't just jump to the starting block and get ready. No, you see the swimmer come out, they're stretching, they're getting ready, they're warming up. They're actually even in the warm-up area before they even come out there. Then they come out there, then they're getting ready, getting mindset. Then they're getting on the starting block seconds, minutes early, waiting, then they get ready, right? I mean, lots of preparation goes into that last piece. Same thing. We should be getting to a meeting early, getting set, getting our notes ready, getting everything good to go so that we can start on time. And then if you start on time, you end early. So I blocked, one of the things he talks about is if you go 1 to 3 and then 3 to 5 with your meetings, so that would mean I'm going to end the meeting at 3 and then start the next meeting. Either I'm going to, be late for that next meeting, or I'm going to leave early from that one. And so he's always like, end early, because everyone typically has maybe something else they're trying to get to at that hour. So if you end 5 minutes early, you just gave them 5 minutes to prepare for their next meeting, or even 10 minutes. So be conscious that most people in that room probably have a meeting at the top of the next hour.
Yeah.
I thought those are great tips.
Yeah, I think the start on time point too is we all can think of times where we came to a meeting and we didn't walk in at 9 o'clock on a 9 o'clock meeting, and how much better we felt about the meeting. I know for me, if I come in at 8:55 or 8:50 and I've prepared, I get way more out of it.
Yep.
And the end on time, right? And that's something I'm not good at, as I go back to back to back to back, and it lends to one goes over the next one, and then by the time you're at the end of the day, you're 30 minutes late, and you're not. There's a perspective that you don't respect the other person's time when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the start on time prepared will lend to a much better experience.
Yeah, and what percent do you show up on time? Hold on, I just want to write this down.
That's most of the time.
Most
The
of
first
time.
meeting
What's
of the
most
day.
of the time?
The first
Okay.
meeting of the
All right,
day.
all right. I
I'm
just was curious
mostly on time.
how often you're on time. And then the compressing time. This is a key one, and this one's one that I try to use myself, which is a lot of times we go, oh, this is 30 minutes, this is an hour, this is 2 hours, and if you think about it, if you had to clean your house and you had 2 hours versus if you had 30 minutes. You're going to clean your house in 30 minutes a different way, but you're still going to get it done.
Yeah.
You work harder, you work faster, you get it done. I got 30 minutes, somebody's going to be here. You still get the house clean. Versus if you gave yourself 2 hours, you might go a little slower. You might do this, maybe watch a little TV in between, then you get back to it. So his point is look at it compressing time and getting more efficient. And that has been harder for us. We do weekly meetings at our company and that are 30 minutes. And that was hard at first to try to get people to compress to that time. But ultimately, people have compressed and they get a lot done in those 30 minutes. What tools have you used around time in compressing or?
Yeah, I think hearing it's great to be reminded of it. The intentionality of, the example of cleaning the house is great, right? If you had 30 minutes, you would do the most important thing in the 30 minutes. You'd get a ton of value out of it.
Yep.
If you took the 30 minutes down to 10, you would do the same thing. And I think just pushing that, again, both sides from the executive to management to those attending, if everybody comes in with that mindset, you're going to get so much more done, right? So I just think the mindset and intentionality around it is important.
Some of the roles he talks about in meetings are moderator, the parking lot, the timekeeper, participants, and closer. And for people that have not heard the term parking lot before, parking lot's a great tool within a meeting where somebody brings up an idea that has nothing to do with this meeting, or it's something that has come up in this meeting we weren't aware of. You put that in the parking lot and say, hey, great, let's talk about that at a different time, at a different meeting, because today we're here about this. Let's get this done. Without a parking lot, that's how you get derailed in meetings. I do believe parking lot is a key one. And I'm not the best at it, at keeping a parking lot. But that's where he says, have somebody who is good at it in the meeting, good at being in the parking lot, somebody who is good at timekeepers. I'm not the best timekeeping, so it'd be good to have somebody else. And then know, what is my role? Am I a participant? Am I the moderator? Those kinds of things. I think that's good to have that mindset.
Yeah, the other part that I see with that, again, in growing a team is you learn who is good at that, right? Maybe they have a unique ability in doing the different things, and then they're more invested in the meeting when they have a role like that too, right? Like moving it along or raising their hand and being empowered to say a parking lot. In fact, you say you're not good at it, but I remember back at Arrowhead in a meeting with Ken, you did that, and I was like, whoa, that was so cool. Like the meeting was getting derailed, and you went on a whiteboard, you wrote parking lot in like a purple marker, and wrote that down. You say, hey, we're just going to park that over here for now. And the meeting moved on. I was like, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, and that's the power of that is if you are going to do a parking lot, I would suggest a whiteboard where you write it, because then the person who brought up the topic believes that it will get discussed later. Yeah. If you just say, hey, we're going to parking lot that, we'll talk about it, they don't feel heard. They're like, did you write that down? Like, what was that about? Do you even know what I was trying to talk about? Versus you go, hey, okay, so tell me about that again. And then you write it on the whiteboard. Okay, we see it right here. It's visual. Yeah. We're going to talk about that later. That has power. Okay, so then the third part of the book is where Cameron starts to talk about the different types of meetings and give suggestions how to hold those different types. I'm going to do my best to quickly read these types of meetings so that anyone who's listening could say, okay, cool, I would like to know that part of the book. So he discusses quarterly and yearly retreats, quarterly board advisor meetings, quarterly business assessments, monthly financial meetings, weekly action reviews, weekly strategy, weekly goal setting and one-on-ones, the daily huddle.
It's huddle time. We do that one good. So,
and then the ad hoc meeting. And then he also discusses virtual. Now, the virtual, I will say this book was written little before we are in virtual. He does talk about some things that you can do virtual, don't, that maybe has changed in times in more recent years. He mentioned Skype, probably not using Skype as much anymore for
Cameron,
virtual
update your
meetings,
book,
but
man.
he might have updated it.
Yeah.
I've got the old version, so maybe he's got an updated version. But that being said, as I go through these types of meetings, one of the things that sits with me is for this book, what might even be helpful for somebody is, hey, go read part one, part two, which is, half the book, and save part three for when you're planning one of these
Mm-hmm.
meetings. Oh, I'm going to do my yearly meeting. I'm going to do my quarterly meeting, pull that section out, read that section, refresh yourself, prepare for that. That's a great way that I think you could use this as a tool for you. But on the quarterly and yearly retreats, I'm curious, Mike, what have you seen that has been helpful, or what would you like to see more of in quarterly or yearly retreats that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the quarterly. What we've done well is when we've had a really good meeting is the preparation for it, right? And you're running those now. And when we get really the runway, maybe 2 weeks of, hey, here's the agenda, and I'll have a role in it. Maybe the other leaders do too. It lends to a better meeting when we get there because we've had time to prepare. We know what the topics are going to be. Typically, they're off-site, so there's less distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Things I know we get distracted by, and I think it's in there, is like, should devices be allowed or
Yeah.
not? But I think we've got a very good cadence with our quarterly meetings. I get a lot out of them because I think we're prepared for it. Yearlies, I guess if there was the fun part of it might be, hey, we should do more of a retreat, right? Where we go further away, right? Where we're out of office on a quarterly, maybe we go out of city or out of state for a yearly. To show how important it is. I don't know that you have to do that, but that might, lend to more importance with it. Same thing though, I think when we have the runway to go into the meeting and the team understands it and they come, because you can tell when you go who's prepared and who hasn't. And also from the standpoint of the attendee, what am I preparing for with it to be ready to receive it?
Yeah, and he talks about that the yearly could be an overnight maybe, or the quarterly maybe is just a day. And the other piece that I like about the yearly that he talks about is bringing in some team building, bringing in some leadership development, right? So this is your annual time to develop everybody, and what are the new tools out there? I mean, every year there's new things that we could be teaching, training, working on. So a yearly is a great spot for that
Yeah.
too. So I like both those, and then check in with your Vivid Vision, which Cameron Harold's got another book, Vivid Vision, that you can read. But that's where the owner is really painting that picture of what is 5 years, what does 10 years look like, and so you're doing a check in each year, and I think that's a good exercise to have as well. So rather than go through a lot of these, I do want to focus on the Daily Huddle because it's one that we've had a long time. It's one that Vern Harnish, who wrote the book Scaling Up, and Cameron Harold here with Meeting Suck. They would both tell you the daily is key to an organization. You have to have some type of daily check-in, daily huddle. I actually, in my career, had the opportunity to work at Target, and Target does a daily huddle every day in their, at the front of their building. And so, that this is a concept that has worked. It does work. You got to have a daily check-in. What have you done within the daily huddle that you've seen that has worked well, that you think, if a business owner or somebody's listening to this, that they should get from a daily huddle?
Yeah. So I'll go how we used to do it, which was probably more appropriate for our company size, and how we do it today, which both are driving value. Because one, I think, was driving informational value in an exciting way. The other is driving more, maybe adrenaline is the word he uses, in a daily way. But the daily huddle was a very informational, all hands on deck, standing up, exciting. You have somebody leading it who is exciting. In the past, when we were a little bit smaller, maybe we had each team owned a day and shared information about what's going on in marketing and sales and membership and maybe the TPA, which let the company know what was going on. And we shared high fives and good news. So it was it was run very well, but it was all hands on deck. It was standing up. We encouraged everybody to come. Leaders were there. Their teams were there. Today, as we've grown a little bigger, is it's shifted a little bit from information sharing to more about excitement and adrenaline. And we share good news where we're stuck, right? So there's an opportunity for anybody in the company to raise their hand and say, this is what's going on and I'm stuck, and they can get it out there, which from the flip side is very empowering. And we've seen new team members come on, and when we share this book with them when they start, and when they feel empowered, they're raising their hand in that huddle saying, hey, I'm stuck on this, and it gets fixed very quickly. And then the high fives. So people get recognized outside of maybe I go, hey, guy did a great job. Thanks for this. But now I'm in front of the whole company recognizing somebody. So there's a feeling like I'm going to go home and share that with my family or my mom or my dad or my spouse. That's worked very well. And people on my team, I know there's a culture of it where they go down and it generates excitement. They look forward to it. They leave with energy from it. And it's a fun, 3 to 7 minutes.
Yeah. And Cameron suggests potentially doing the daily huddle twice a day. He also talks about that as your company grows, maybe you move more into adrenaline type huddles with smaller groups. But ultimately, everybody would say you got to do something daily that's a check-in with everybody, that's getting energy going. There's other books out there about daily huddles. I mean, I think this is just a key one. It's a key one that I think businesses overlook that can be really key to the growth of their business. So as we come to a close, as we've talked through the book today, what are some things that you think are takeaways for you as a leader that help you be successful with meetings so that they don't suck?
Yeah, I just even talking about it, the things I'm thinking about are going back to my team, not necessarily the managers, but they'll be in this discussion is supervisors, leads, and just our frontline employees. Reminding them from their side about how important they are in a meeting. I think I miss that, where I go in and I think it's either about me running a good meeting or about the leader running a good meeting. It takes everybody, right? And at some point, everybody in that company is going to do it, and we want a return on their time and money that we're spending. So my takeaway was, gosh, go get all these team members I have very engaged in where you're coming in a meeting, prepare yourselves for it. So they're participating too.
Yeah, I mean, we want to get rid of I got another meeting on my calendar thinking, right? That mindset, we need people thinking, I cannot wait for this meeting. We're going to get stuff done and we're going to move on to the next one. And then that creates momentum, that creates growth. And I'll do a last just check-in on devices, which is, Cameron's take in this book, which is devices can be in a meeting. That's fine. People take notes on devices. Yeah. But let's not have devices become, I'm looking at my email, I'm browsing the internet, because the second you do that, you're not attending anymore. You're somewhere else. Yeah. And you're not being a good participant in that meeting. And that's two ways, though. Somebody might not be a good participant because we didn't do an agenda, and it's a meeting that they shouldn't even be in. And so to your point, they're clicking and clacking, and they're like, why am I even here? So I would... I know some companies talk about, check your device at the door. I'd say let's get the right people in the room where they don't need their device. They don't feel like they need to look at their device. If they're engaged in the meeting and you've done an agenda and they are there and participating, they're not going to look at their email. Mm-hmm. The whole reason they look at their email is because you got somebody in the meeting that they don't need to be there for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think both sides, as a leader preparing it, you got to make it so it's going to drive value. But coming in, I also have to be prepared. And if those two things happen, meetings are much better.
They don't suck.
Yeah, they suck a little less.
They suck a little less.
No, they're good. They're good.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to.
Thank you for listening and or watching today on Optimistic Americans Book Club. We discussed the book Meetings Suck by Cameron Herold. Again, like, subscribe, give us comments, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for joining the Optimistic American Show. Now help us grow by subscribing to our channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like and a comment. There is so much more that we have planned, and we can't wait for you to embark upon this journey with us.